The dinner started as one of those evenings that should have been warm and unremarkable, laughter echoing through the house, the scent of roasted chicken filling the air, and Megan moving between the kitchen and dining table, making sure everyone felt at home. Daniel, Ethan's best friend since college, was his usual charming self, loud and full of jokes. But as Megan leaned over to refill a glass, Daniel's hand brushed her shoulder, then stayed there, too long, too familiar. Her smile froze for a second, the air thickened, and though everyone kept talking, something in her chest tightened uncomfortably. Ethan noticed, of course. He laughed it off instantly, as if to smooth over the moment before it became real. "He's just like that, doesn't mean anything," he said, his tone light but firm, a signal for her not to make it awkward. The others followed his lead, pretending nothing had happened. Megan forced herself to join their laughter, her cheeks burning with a mix of shame and confusion. It wasn't just the touch, it was the permission Ethan gave it. The quiet message that her discomfort was less important than keeping the peace. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was wrapped in silence, Megan tried to bring it up. Her voice trembled, not from anger, but from the need to be heard. Ethan sighed, brushing her concern away as if it were a small misunderstanding. "You're overreacting. He's family." That single phrase settled like a stone in her heart. As she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Megan realized it wasn't Daniel who haunted her, it was Ethan's dismissal. The quiet betrayal of knowing her pain didn't matter in her own home. Megan's life moved in quiet. Predictable rhythms, early mornings at the hospital, endless shifts filled with the exhaustion of caring for others, and evenings spent managing the chaos of home. She'd mastered the art of patience, the nurse who never snapped, the mother who always showed up, the wife who forgave thoughtlessness without a word. 15 years of marriage to Ethan had built a life of stability, not warmth. He was admired by everyone, charming, successful, funny, but at home, his charm became indifference. Megan had learned long ago that when she spoke of hurt, he'd only sigh and say, "You're too sensitive." Her days blurred together, hospital corridors, laundry piles, dinners eaten half warm. Yet through her children, the cracks in her quiet endurance showed. Chloe, 16 and fiery, questioned everything her mother accepted. "Why do you always let him talk to you like that?" She'd snap, her tone a mix of love and exasperation. Noah, 13, stayed quieter but watched closely, absorbing every unspoken rule between his parents. He didn't understand why respect meant silence. Megan wanted to shield them both, from tension, from judgment, but deep down, she feared she was teaching them. Submission disguised as peace. Daniel and Rachel's constant presence added to the quiet suffocation of Megan's world. Daniel, with his careless flirtations and smirking comments, always pushed boundaries under the guise of humor. His wife Rachel smiled through it all, a mirror of Megan's own silence, the kind of woman who'd learned not to make things uncomfortable. The dinners, the laughter, the small humiliations passed unnoticed by everyone but Megan, yet beneath her exhaustion was something alive, a quiet, simmering awareness that she was disappearing inside the role she'd been praised for. She didn't know it yet, but something in her had started to resist. The weekend began with forced smiles and familiar routines. Ethan, ever the gracious host, insisted Daniel stay over for convenience, brushing off Megan's hesitation as needless worry. The barbecue filled the backyard with laughter, smoke, and clinking glasses. From the outside, they looked like the perfect suburban family, friends, food, harmony. But inside, Megan felt the quiet weight of pretending. Later, as she tidied up in the kitchen, Daniel followed her in, leaning too close, his voice low and casual. "Ethan's lucky. Not many women your age keep it together like this." His tone wasn't a compliment, it was a test. For a moment, Megan couldn't move. The words hung between them, sharp and invasive, cutting through the hum of the evening. Before she could react, Ethan entered, catching only the tail end of the comment. Instead of anger, he laughed, tossing an arm around Daniel's shoulder. "Don't flirt with my wife, man," he joked. The room filled with forced laughter, but Daniel's smirk said everything. He'd been granted permission. Megan's heart sank. It wasn't the first time Ethan had dismissed her discomfort, but this time the humiliation burned deeper. It wasn't just silence anymore, it was complicity. That night, Megan's unease turned to heartbreak when she overheard Chloe's voice through the thin walls. "You never take Mom seriously," her daughter said, furious and trembling. "You laugh when people disrespect her." Ethan brushed it off, just as he always did. But to Megan, those words pierced through years of practiced tolerance. For the first time, she saw how her quiet endurance had shaped her family, teaching her daughter frustration, her son confusion, her husband indifference. As she lay awake, her heart heavy and mind spinning, Megan finally understood it wasn't just about Daniel's words. It was about reclaiming herself. Megan's silence became its own kind of rebellion. She no longer laughed at Ethan's careless jokes or smoothed over his sharp words. When he brushed off her opinions, she didn't argue. She simply withdrew. The house felt different, heavier, as if everyone sensed a shift they couldn't name. Ethan grew irritable, confused by the quiet woman who no longer catered to his moods. Then came Daniel's message. Didn't mean to make things weird. "You looked beautiful last night." Her stomach churned, but instead of deleting it, she saved it. For once, she refused to erase what had really happened. Ethan noticed the change, but couldn't see his part in it. When Megan responded curtly or avoided his touch, he accused her of trying to create drama, as if her exhaustion were an act. Chloe, sharp as ever, defended her mother openly, challenging Ethan's dismissiveness at every turn. Their home became a battlefield of tension and unsaid truths. Even Noah, the quiet one, began acting out, arguments at school, mood swings at home, echoing the chaos he didn't understand. The silence that once kept peace now exposed every fracture in their family's foundation. One afternoon, Rachel appeared at Megan's door, eyes tired and voice trembling. She confessed that Daniel's behavior wasn't new. He'd crossed lines with others, including her. "I just stopped fighting it," she whispered, her shame mingling with resignation. The admission broke something in Megan, not out of anger but grief. Grief for every woman who'd learned to survive disrespect by pretending it didn't exist. Days later, at a party, Ethan joked loudly, "Don't leave Megan alone with Daniel. She might fall for him." Laughter filled the room, but Megan's world went still. That night, wiping away silent tears, she decided she was done being quiet. The night of the dinner arrived, cloaked in uneasy calm. Megan set the table with quiet precision, candles lit, silverware aligned, her face unreadable. Ethan assumed her serenity meant forgiveness. Daniel mistook it for submission. Conversation began light, the usual small talk masking tension beneath every word. Then, midway through the meal, Megan stood. Her voice was steady as she said she wanted to clear the air. From a folder, she pulled out printed screenshots and placed them on the table. The soft flicker of candlelight reflected off the pages Daniel's words, undeniable and ugly in their simplicity. Silence filled the room like smoke. Daniel's face drained of color, and Rachel's hand trembled as she read the message. Ethan's forced smile faltered, eyes darting between his wife and his friend. Megan didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "This isn't about one message," she said evenly. "It's about years of being disrespected by both of you." Daniel stammered, tried to laugh it off, but the sound died when Ethan stayed silent. In that silence, everything was exposed. Ethan's complicity, Daniel's arrogance, and the cost of Megan's long-endured patience. For once, Megan felt no fear, only clarity. She looked at Ethan, at Daniel, at Rachel, each of them caught in their own shame, and spoke softly. "You taught me something tonight. Respect isn't given by others. It's claimed by yourself." The room stayed frozen as she walked out, her steps calm, deliberate. Behind her, Ethan sat speechless, Daniel stared at the floor, and Rachel broke down in quiet sobs. Megan didn't look back. For the first time in years, she wasn't escaping. She was reclaiming herself. Weeks later, Megan's life looked different, quieter, smaller, but finally her own. She and the kids had moved into a modest apartment, sunlight streaming through thin curtains, the kind of space that felt honest instead of perfect. Chloe thrived in the new environment, proud of her mother's strength, while Noah adjusted slowly, learning that safety came from truth, not silence. Megan's days at the hospital took on new meaning. Between shifts, she started a small support group for women, a circle of nurses, mothers and wives, where they talked about boundaries, respect, and the courage to say enough. Ethan reached out more than once, his tone softer now, filled with guilt and nostalgia. He said he missed her, the family, the laughter. When they met at a cafe, Megan listened quietly. She didn't harbor anger anymore, only understanding. "I forgive you," she said, voice steady, "but forgiveness doesn't mean return." For the first time, he seemed to understand what she meant, that love without respect was just habit. As she walked away from him, there was no bitterness, only peace, the quiet satisfaction of choosing herself after years of being overlooked. Rachel's transformation mirrored Megan's own. She left Daniel, found work, and began attending Megan's support meetings. Their friendship deepened, built not on shared pain but mutual rebirth. Both women were learning how to live without apology, how to take up space without guilt. Sometimes Megan still felt the ache of what was lost, the years, the effort, the illusion of safety, but it no longer defined her. Standing before her group one afternoon, she smiled and said, "Freedom isn't loud. It's the quiet that comes after you finally stop explaining yourself." And for once, she felt entirely free. Months later, life had softened into something steady and real. Megan sat in the auditorium, the familiar buzz of parents and children filling the air. Noah was backstage, nervous but smiling, his confidence slowly returning. When Ethan arrived, he didn't stride in like he used to. He moved quietly, a man humbled by time and consequence. During intermission, he approached her hesitantly, hands tucked in his pockets. "You were right," he said, eyes lowered. "I laughed at things I should have stopped." Megan met his gaze, her voice gentle but firm. "We all learn our lessons differently. I just learned mine the hard way." When the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, the children began their play. A short, heartfelt skit about respect, empathy, and standing up for what's right. Megan watched as Noah delivered his lines with surprising conviction, his voice steady and sure. Something in his words struck her deeply, a reflection of everything she'd fought for without realizing he'd been watching all along. Around her, the audience laughed and clapped, unaware of the quiet symbolism unfolding on stage. Megan smiled, feeling pride swell in her chest, not for perfection, but for growth born out of pain. As the play ended and the crowd erupted in applause, Megan felt a single tear slip down her cheek. It wasn't sadness, it was release. She glanced at Ethan, who was clapping too, his eyes glassy with something like understanding. For the first time, there was no bitterness between them, just acceptance of who they had become. Megan turned back to the stage, her heart light. Sometimes it only takes one moment of disrespect to teach a lifetime's lesson about boundaries and the strength it takes to finally say, "Enough."